If there's any decade that has the most pressure, it's gotta be your 20s, man. You're about to embark on this real world trajectory. You gotta find your passion. You gotta find the love of your life. That's a hefty task for even a whole lifetime, let alone a decade. Here are the best 5 pieces of advice I could come up with, so you're not at the end of your 20s looking back being like, I wasted them. The first best piece of advice. Do you know what the 3 currencies of life are? Awesome. Let me show you. Yes, money is one of them, but there's 2 others. Time and energy. You could also say that there's 3 stages in life: young, adult, and old. Now, at every single stage in life, you have different currencies. When you're young, you have 0 money, but you have tons of energy and tons of time. When you're an adult, you have tons of money, hopefully, and you have tons of energy, but man, you don't got time. You're building a family, you're going to work, you got friends, you got commitments. And then when you're old age, you're retired or above, hopefully you have lots of money and lots of time, but man, you don't have your energy anymore, do you? Or at least not the same you did when you were in your 20s. So what's the point of that chart? It's this big idea. Don't waste time wishing for different cards. Play the hand you're dealt. So instead of spending your whole 20s wishing that you had money, how can you tap in to the things you do have, which is time and energy? Maybe this is building a business, using your time and energy to do it scrappy, startup style. If you want to travel, maybe you're going backpack. You're going to make your best memories this way. These are the times that you're going to remember. Man, I look back on my backpacking days just filled with joy, and I had 0 money doing it, but had a blast. Maybe you want to be an artist and you can't afford studio time. Oh, man, I want to record my music, but I can't afford it. So use your time and energy to learn how to record it yourself, how to produce yourself. Go to YouTube University. Get a degree from there. There's so many awesome tutorials on them. And when you're young and scrappy and learn it for yourself, you're developing a skill that you can use and will continue to pay you for the rest of your life. Don't waste your 20s wishing for a different hand. Learn to play the cards that you were dealt. Big idea number 2. There's a famous story that goes something like this. In the middle of a desert, a donkey is tied up on a pole. Beside him, in the midst of the scorching heat, are 2 buckets. One is full of hay, the other is full of water. It's been a minute and the donkey is now thirsty and hungry at the same time. He keeps looking back and forth. Should I drink or should I eat? Hay, water, hay, water, hay, water. Unable to make up his mind, he eventually keels over and dies. In your 20s, it is so important that you remember this. Don't be a donkey. The moral of the story is twofold. The first, stop being so worried about making the wrong choice that you don't make any. Do I travel the world or should I go to university? Do I go work a job or should I start my own business? Should I enter that relationship with a woman or should I play the field and see what else is out there? Here's the second lesson though, and I think the deeper one. Your biggest fear should not be making the wrong choice, it should be an action. And in life, when you're forced with a choice, sometimes it's a false choice. It's just something your mind is making up. You think in terms of absolutes, black and white, good and bad, up, down. Maybe a better question is, how can you have both? See, what the donkey didn't understand is that had he made a decision and chosen to drink before he eats, he had time to do both and he could have had both what he wanted. You can work a job while starting your business. You can do both, go to university and travel. But what you can't do is any of those. If you're stuck in the middle trying to find the perfect path or the perfect decision, you're gonna be like that donkey, you're gonna keel over, you're gonna die. Metaphorically, you're gonna waste your 20s. Advice for the 20-year-old version number 3. This one's a bit lighter. This one's a bit easier for you to implement immediately. And this is gonna sound strange coming from someone who literally, my full-time job is cameras and documenting and making videos for a living, which is awesome. I wish I would have documented more. And I see this really in 2 forms. The first is you document for others. Now this is easy to do. You take photos and you post them on social media. You take photos and you post them on your story or Instagram. Like this time where I got my hair pulled by a monkey in Bali. Or playing epic shows around the world. I'm not necessarily talking about documenting the epic moments. The second form of documentation, and this is the one I'm gonna recommend to you, and I wish I would have done this a lot more. Just documenting for yourself. I think this is great advice for any age. One of the ways I did this, and I'm so glad I did, get that shoulder press in. All my journals, one of my most prized possessions. Every single year I fill up a journal and then I swap it out every single year. Hands down has been one of the most powerful tools for self-growth and self-discovery I've ever done, and I recommend every single person do it. A cool thing I heard someone do, and I wish I would have done it, is get in a habit every single year, turn on a camera for no reason on your birthday, and talk about what's on your mind. How was life this year? What was the ups? What were the downs? What are you currently struggling with? What do you no longer struggle? Write out a list of 10 questions and answer them every single year on your birthday to a camera. Think about how cool it would be to see your 22-year-old self talk about life when you're 62. 72, 52, a pretty powerful exercise. Speaking of documentation, we have something called Creating the 2.0 U workshop. It's 100% free for YouTube subscribers. I'll link it in the link below. I think a perfect way to get started with journaling or documenting like we're talking about. 100% free, you can grab it after this video. 20-year-old advice number 4. I want you to do this thought exercise with me. It's a little weird, but I know it'll stick. Imagine that right now in front of you, you have 100 Snickerdoodle cookies. These things are good. And imagine that if you ate them, you'd instantly gain 10 pounds. No delay, as soon as you finish that 100th cookie, boom, the love handles are starting to bulge a bit more. The gut's starting to hang out a bit. Clothes are fitting tighter. What would go through your mind? What the hell did I just eat? You'd be freaking out, wouldn't you? How fast would you start hopping on a healthier diet? If the results, as soon as you ate something, you got an immediate result like that, you'd be the most healthy person ever. Sign up for CrossFit the next day. I remember what those Snickerdoodle cookies did to me. I'm never eating a carb for the rest of my life. Another example, you smoke one cigarette and you immediately start coughing up your lungs, breathing problems, get winded soon. You'd never smoke a cigarette ever again. If the results were that immediate, you would turn things around super quick, wouldn't you? Oftentimes in life, you don't see the consequence or benefit from those actions. It could be months, it could be years from when you take them. I think this is the biggest lesson I learned in my entire 20s and what those two examples illustrate. Something called delay time. Point number 4 is to hook your future self up. How do you set yourself up? Financially. Start reading finance books. Start learning about investing. Start being smart with your money, even if it's little. If you can't manage a little, you have no business managing a lot. Truth is that habits you develop when you're broke carry on to when you're rich or well off. And the reason most people don't get rich or well off is because they have poor money management habits. Health. It's a lot easier to put on muscle in your 20s and develop the right healthier habits that'll set your 30 and 40 and 50-year-old self up for success. Relationships. A lot of times the investments you make in relationships, you're not going to see the payout until years down the road when your relationships are deeper. That's one area I could have done better at in my 20s, I think. Maintaining friendships, going deeper, investing in friendships better. Here's life advice point number 5. Here's something I'm not necessarily proud of, but is honest. I spent probably 8 years wanting, lacking, comparing to other people in their 20s, other people around me. Am I making the right decision? Did I choose the right path? How do I compare to the other guys out there? I think led to a lot of unnecessary anxiety and pressure. And it wasn't until I realized something really profound that I want to share with you. In order to compare, you need the full context. You have to understand that most of this story that you're comparing to is left out. Before you compare your relationship to the one on social media, you need the full context. And reality is that most people who are in a super healthy, safe, loving relationship probably don't have the need to write a really long caption about how great their relationship is, trying to convince strangers. In fact, I heard a comedian talk that you can know how much in the shitter someone's relationship is based on how long the caption is. Another area, business. This was big for me. Now I've been behind the scenes and seen enough of these coaches who claim that they're gonna show you this magical money-making machine, passive income, business, where you're gonna accumulate all this wealth and eventually have, I don't know, servants throwing grapes in your mouth, fanning you with those big banana leaves, right? That's the dream they sell you. Meanwhile, while they're selling you that dream, behind the scenes, their business is falling apart and they spend all their active time trying to build this passive thing. Well, the person who sets off in van life and traveling the country or the world, talking about how, material possessions don't matter and the society's so materialistic. Meanwhile, they're in a van build that costs $20, $30, $50,000 to build. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they got their money from their parents or a trust fund, or they had some sort of safety net to fall back to if it all didn't work out. Truth is, we all have our insecurities. We all have our flaws. We all have the things that we're not exactly sharing with people and that we self-edit and leave out intentionally. So before you compare, just remember, you don't have the full context. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And if you lived with that person and saw the inner workings or the ins and outs or the real struggles, you'd realize maybe you're more similar and you would stop putting these people that you're comparing to on such a high pedestal. Now, it's fine to be inspired by other people, but man, as soon as you start comparing and wanting and lacking and feeling like you're lower than them and, oh man, I'm never gonna be like that, or I'm such a loser compared to that person, you're a loser because you're losing. You're taking the very thing away from yourself, which is what most people would want: energy, time, and you're wasting it comparing to someone that you don't even have the full context to. Now, I can't tell you how to stop comparing. That's a lesson you're gonna have to learn on your own. But I wanna plant that mantra inside your head that it's okay if you don't have it all figured out. It's okay if you have to work your way up. There's no shame in starting from bottom. Put your blinders on. Remember, to compare, you need the full context. Those are the 5 lessons I wish I knew in my 20s. Going back to our earlier point on journaling, if you want some help with this, I'll link up right here the perfect follow-up to this. Again, I think keeping a journal, one of the best things you can do for self-growth. Watch that video. I'll walk you through our whole 6-in-1 system so you can coach yourself.